10. Great white shark. A diver that was exploring off the coast of Florida had a very spooky encounter with a massive great white shark. He actually captured the encounter on video using the underwater camera attached to his head. Jimmy Roseman was swimming in the murky waters of Vero Beach when he realized a great white shark was circling him. According to what Roseman told local TV news, the shark kept a distance of no less than 7 feet or 2.1 meters during the encounter. It was absolutely terrifying, especially since the great white shark can grow to be over 20 feet or 6 meters long and over 5,000 pounds or around 2,200 kilos heavy, with 7 rows of over 300 extremely sharp teeth. If you've seen Jaws the movie, it's pretty likely you have some kind of fear of sharks, specifically giant ones that are circling you. Attacks are relatively uncommon, but when they happen, well, they're usually fatal. Humans are seriously no match for these apex predators. This is one of those times that the diver got off lucky. He was insanely fortunate that he had his spear gun with him, and when he poked the shark with the sharp end of the gun, it swam away. But if he hadn't had that gun with him, or the good sense to defend himself, there's no telling what the giant shark would have done. 9. Dangerous dolphins. A British girl has been attacked by dolphins. Yes, dolphins. Dolphins may be the jokers of the sea, but they apparently have a very dark side to them not many people know about or even want to fathom. This British girl was only 10 years old when she went to Dolphin Discovery in Cancun with her family to get the full swimming with dolphins experience. The experience happened in a closed-off part of the sea in which the dolphins are kept captive. Basically, the dolphins here are prisoners, and just like any other prisoner, they probably don't enjoy being harassed. When the girl got into the sea pen with the animals, they turned on her in seconds. The child's mother watched helplessly as the dolphins dragged the girl underwater and started biting her. The girl survived the incident, though she was left with lacerations, bruises, and teeth marks from the angry dolphins. Nobody knows why they attacked this child unprovoked. Maybe they thought it was funny, or maybe they thought she was one of their captors. A lot of tourist venues sell close contact interactions with dolphins with the promise of a magical moment with the creatures. Animal-loving visitors book these experiences with good intentions for their friends and family and don't realize the hidden risk and cruelty these businesses are profiting from. Luckily, this little girl ended up okay, but she'll probably be afraid of dolphins for the rest of her life. 8. Stingray stay away. Even though everybody says stingrays aren't aggressive or dangerous, an awful lot of people will disagree, as there have been quite a handful of people killed by them recently. Australian conservationist and beloved personality Steve Irwin was killed by one in 2006, and another Australian man was just murdered by another stingray in Tasmania. The guy had been swimming at Lauderdale Beach when the incident occurred. It's not exactly clear what this guy was doing in the water other than swimming, as he wasn't in the best of shape to answer questions after the attack. These creatures can get pretty big. They can be over 7.5 feet or 2.2 meters long from their heads to the tip of their tail, and they can weigh 700 pounds or 320 kilos. However, they usually only sting for self-defense purposes, so maybe the stingray thought it was in trouble and that's why it stung him. The official statement was that he had inflicted wounds probably by a marine animal, but the local media and animal experts did say his wound was consistent with a stingray attack. According to the BBC, after he suffered a puncture to his lower abdomen, the man went into cardiac arrest and sadly he died. He was only 42 years old at the time. 7. Hungry hippo. A woman from Tampa Bay named Kristen Yaldor survived an attack from the most dangerous animal in all of Africa back in 2018. She was just living her best life, enjoying a vacation with her husband in Zimbabwe, celebrating her upcoming birthday. This particular day started off like any other on an African vacation, but it was also Kristen's special day. She and her husband set off for some nature photography near Victoria Falls. They were going on a river tour and both of them were really excited. Just as they began to snap gorgeous photos, the guide ordered them to quickly paddle back to shore. That's because he spotted a hippopotamus, the animal that kills more humans in Africa every year than carnivores and predators. Unfortunately for Kristen, she didn't get out of the water fast enough. The hippo smashed into her boat, knocked her into the river, then bit her right leg and dragged her underwater. Luckily, she was an experienced scuba diver. She knew to hold her breath and not panic. Kristen was smart enough to stick her hands into the hippo's mouth, startling the big animal. With its grip loose on her legs, she swam back to shore and out of danger. But the fun wasn't over. Kristen was in bad shape. Her leg was definitely broken and she was bleeding pretty badly. She had to be airlifted to a hospital, and she then spent the next few weeks in and out of hospitals and surgeries as she recovered from the deadly bite. Now she's back home and doing just fine. That's one epic birthday for the books. Have you ever been on a river tour and seen a hippo? Tell us about your experience in the comments section below. And if you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Angry orcas. Not all of the most terrifying underwater encounters are strictly human. It turns out great white sharks are just as prone to having nightmarish encounters with sea animals as humans. Autopsies done on 6 great white shark bodies that washed up on the South African coast have shown that orca whales, also known as killer whales, are targeting sharks and purposefully eating their livers and hearts. Yikes! Marine biologist Alison Towner helped to perform the autopsies, later describing her findings on Shark Talk. She claims that the orca whales are physically ripping open the sharks just below their throats with expert precision, allowing the organs to slip out from inside and be gobbled up by the whales. While this doesn't exactly have anything to do with people, it's pretty terrifying for the poor great white sharks who are just swimming around trying to eat people having a relaxing day at the beach. But hey, now the sharks know what it feels like to be hunted. Who knew killer whales and great white sharks had such turmoil between them? I wonder who started it. I am here for the drama. 5. Killed by a gator. In South Carolina, a woman has died after a rather silly encounter with an alligator. The entire thing was, well, her very own fault. The death happened on Kiowa Island after the woman tried to touch the alligator as if it was a fluffy kitten. The victim had spotted the alligator from a friend's porch and was taking pictures of it. She then wanted to pet the alligator. When the victim's friend came outside and saw her down by the pond, seemingly playing with the alligator, she screamed for her to get away. She also screamed that a deer had been eaten by an alligator from the very spot she stood not more than a few days ago. In response, the victim yelled back that she didn't look like a deer. It doesn't really get more ignorant than that. It was just a few seconds later, after making this completely outlandish remark, that the alligator launched itself at the woman, just like it would with a deer. It got her by the leg and was pulling her into the water. By this time, someone had gotten a rope and threw it towards the woman. She managed to get the rope in her hand, but by then she was halfway into the water. Her last words were, "I guess I won't do this again," and then she was gone, savaged underwater by the annoyed alligator. Authorities say as helpers were pulling the rope, the gator started to do its famous roll and Covert lost her grip and she went underwater. Deputies with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and crews with the St. John's Fire Department scanned the pond, but did not see any movement when they arrived. After about 15 minutes, authorities saw her body surface. However, when crews reached Covert, the alligator still had her by the leg and then pulled her back under the water. 4. Nipple attack. A man was in the water just minding his own business when the unthinkable happened. He was only up to his waist, but it was deep enough to be viciously attacked. Luckily for us, he was recording himself with an underwater camera pointed up at his face. In the video, we have a full view of the small fish swimming around his waist and of his chest, the area that was attacked. What seemed to be a completely innocent fish turned out to be demons when one of them lurched out of the water, went at least a foot above the surface, bit the guy's nipple as hard as it could, and then splashed back down and swam away. We don't know exactly where this guy was, so I can't warn you to stay away from the area. But what we do know is nobody is safe anywhere in the water with nipple-biting fish swimming around. I'm not sure if this encounter is scary or hilarious. What do you think? 3. Walrus selfie. A man in China tried to take a selfie with a walrus. If you know anything about the walrus, you'll know it is not a creature that really likes to take selfies. It's also one of the biggest marine mammals in the world. The man who was attacked had been visiting Shishaka Wildlife Park by himself and was busy taking videos and pictures for social media. He came across the walrus. It looked pretty friendly to him, so he started taking pictures with it. That was when the walrus grabbed the man from behind and pulled him into the nearby water pool. One of the witnesses claimed that the walrus had just wanted to play, But considering the walrus weighed around 1.5 tons or 2,500 pounds, it was a bit like playing with a bulldozer in the water. The animal kept the unfortunate businessman submerged, throwing his body around like a paper doll until he eventually died. After the incident, the public was outraged because there hadn't been any kind of barrier between the animal and the public. The deceased man's family was given a handsome payout, though it's not yet clear whether they have installed walls to keep the walrus and the public separated as of yet. Sometimes people forget just how wild and unpredictable animals can be. 2. Fatal sting. A teenager in Australia was recently let off life support just a week after having an unfortunate encounter with a box jellyfish while swimming at the beach in Queensland. According to the BBC, the youngster's death is the first fatality recorded since 2006 in relation to the box jellyfish. This is a creature considered to be the most venomous in the marine world. The box jellyfish has very long tentacles covered in barbs that deliver deadly poison the moment they come into contact with your skin. Once the venom is injected, it leads to cardiac arrest, paralysis, and most often, death. Local authorities say the boy had been swimming near the small town of Bamaga when he was stung. It was so serious that he had to be flown to a faraway hospital and treated, but unfortunately for him and his loved ones, the treatment didn't work. His body simply couldn't handle the venom, and he passed away after a week of being kept alive on machines. 1. Spearfishing fail. A 34-year-old man was spearfishing off the coast of Australia when he ran into a rather ornery shark. The incident happened in 2020, around 200 miles or 320 k's up the coast from the city of Brisbane. The man never even caught any fish. He was just swimming around when the shark attacked him from his blind spot, clamped down on his leg, and ripped the limb into shreds. The shark's teeth did such great damage that it needed only one bite to put the man down for good. He bled out despite being immediately treated by medical professionals. There was simply nothing they could do to stop so much blood pouring out of his body. Unfortunately, there was no word on what type of shark it was. Judging by the shocking lethality of the attack, it was probably a great white or a bull shark. 10. Basilosaurus, king of the lizards. The Basilosaurus was a terrifying creature with sharp teeth and a mouth so big it could swallow you without even knowing it. The beast is now extinct, and most would be pretty happy about that. The creature lived between 40 and 35 million years ago and could grow to be over 60 feet or 18 meters in length. Its name translates to king lizard, but the animal was not actually a lizard. Instead, it was a savage, predatory whale. The first fossil of this great and ancient beast was discovered in Alabama. Scientists at first thought it was some kind of aquatic reptile, but they were slightly confused because it came from a more recent time when mammals ruled the earth. It wasn't for a while until they realized it was actually a whale, but one unlike anything lurking in the oceans alive today. Unfortunately, scientists still don't know everything about the Basilosaurus. Some of its body parts weren't preserved long enough for scientists to find them. Usually, nothing at all is left of an animal that's been dead millions and millions of years. Scientists do know it was the largest meat eater during its time on Earth. It probably went extinct due to climate change, and that's about it. We haven't collected enough fossils yet to learn more about the great king lizard. 9. Opabinia, Cambrian freak show. The Opabinia is one of the strangest creatures that ever lived. It was really tiny, no larger than a shrimp, but it had 5 eyes bulging out of its face with a mouth on the underside of its body facing backwards. The lobes that came out from the sides of the Opabinia were quite flat and projected in a downwards angle. The lobes also overlapped with one another, with the rear edge placed over the top of the front edge with the lobe behind it. Markings on these lobes are believed to be gills and are present on all but strangely not the first lobes on either side. However, these gills have also been interpreted to being on both either the top or lower sides of the lobes. If the gills were underneath, they would have been protected from above. However, if the gills were on the top of the lobe, they would have been protected from below as well, having a greater exposure to the flow of ocean water due to the overlapping arrangement. All its features seem to be in the wrong place, causing a freak show from the Cambrian era, unlike any other weird critter living in the oceans today. The fossils of the Opabinia were discovered in British Columbia, and the creature flourished about 500 million years ago. It was only 3 inches long but was a voracious carnivore. It would have used its proboscis to search for creatures on the dusty seafloor and shove them into its backwards mouth. As for what kind of animal it was, scientists agree the Opabinia was probably an ancestor of arthropods, or that it was at least related to the ancient ancestors of arthropods. Perhaps with its closest living relative being the velvet worm, another disgusting and very weird-looking creature. Proganochelys, the first turtle. The Proganochelys may be the oldest turtle ever, with fossils dating back to the Permian epoch around 298 million years ago. It was first discovered and named by Georg Bohr in the year 1887. Researchers say it was about 3 feet or 1 meter long and had some very primitive features not found in very many other turtle specimens. For example, it had teeth. Turtles typically don't have teeth. But these weren't even normal teeth. They were located on the roof of the turtle's mouth instead of on its jaws. Even though this is one of the most primitive turtles ever to be found, much debate is still going on about where turtles came from even before. Some claim turtles evolved from the same group as dinosaurs and crocodiles. Others say turtles came from a group of lizards, and a third theory suggests turtles came from a group of creatures known as anapsids, which were strange animals, utterly terrifying, looking like turtles mixed with armadillos mixed with dinosaurs. We wonder if these turtles would have been as calm as some of the peaceful ones we know and love today, or aggressive because of the way they looked. 7. Tully monster, the weirdest animal ever. The Tully monster almost looked like a swimming slug with a very long lobster claw growing out of its non-existent face. That's how weird this animal was. Can you picture it? Scientists have recently uncovered the truth about this bizarre creature though, which they previously thought was some kind of strange worm. They now know that the Tully monster was a type of fish with no jaw known as a lamprey. What's really funny is that scientists have been trying to figure out the origins of the Tully monster, which lived 300 million years ago, for the past half-century. The fossils of the Tully monster were found in northern Illinois. According to Victoria McCoy, who conducted the study of the Tully monster while at Yale University, it should be ranked at the top of the scale in weirdness. It had a body shaped like a torpedo and a nose like a trunk that ended in a claw. Paleontologist James Lansdell of the American Museum of Natural History in New York said, "I've always loved detective work, and in paleontology it doesn't get much better than this. Our restudy of the specimens has shown that it is a very strange lamprey, a group of eel-like vertebrates that live in rivers and seas today." One more time, imagine a fish with an arm growing out of it that is just about as long as its body, with a tiny pincer claw at the end. That's what the Tully monster looked like. It even had eyes set on either end of a bar-like structure that stretched across its back. It was about 14 inches or 36 centimeters long and had a single dorsal fin. It was basically the weirdest prehistoric fish ever. What do you think is the most bizarre creature that's still alive today? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. 6. Short-faced bear, the largest bear. In North America during the last ice age, the most powerful land carnivore was the short-faced bear. It weighed a whopping 1,500 pounds or 683 kilos. It was taller than the modern grizzly bear and it had much longer limbs. In other words, it was a much more efficient killing machine. Oh, and it also had a short face, hence where it got its name. The largest skull of the bear was found by a gold miner in the Yukon, dating back to around 20,000 years ago. The short-faced bear lived all throughout North America, all the way from Mexico to Alaska. They would have acted as a solitary predator and part-time scavenger, wandering through the forest eating whatever it found. What's really cool is that the short-faced bear went extinct not too long ago. The last one probably died out around 11,000 years before today, beaten at its own game by the rise of the grizzly bear, which migrated to North America from Eurasia. This was a time when all the largest predators were being beaten out by smaller, more versatile animals. 5. Archaeotherium, pig from hell. The Archaeotherium was a kind of entelodont. Entelodonts are the ancestors of modern cattle and sheep, and they lived in the floodplains of ancient Colorado, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Nebraska between 37 and 23 million years ago. The Archaeotherium is popularly known as the pig from hell. That is because it was a massive creature of around 6 feet or 1.8 meters in length, with a skull that took up half its body and long jaws that it used to rip apart unsuspecting prey. It also may have had tusks that it used to dig roots and other plants out of the ground. It may have feasted on ancient camels, as bones belonging to one such creature were discovered crushed in Wyoming, probably from the strong teeth of the hell pig. Yikes! Oddly enough, even though it's referred to as the pig from hell, the Archaeotherium is more closely related to whales and hippos. According to a study done in 2008 and 2009, it probably wasn't even closely related to modern pigs. These animals were also highly aggressive based on skull injuries found in almost all specimens, suggesting they fought with each other frequently. 4. Hatzegopteryx, winged death. In the United Kingdom, the fossil of a giant prehistoric creature was discovered stuck in cliffs on the Isle of Wight. This creature, known as the Hatzegopteryx, had a wingspan of around 20 feet and lived 125 million years ago. According to paleontologists, it was probably one of the biggest species that ever flew in the skies of our planet. It was a hunting predator that weighed 650 pounds or 295 kilos and had elongated jaws that it used to catch and eat prey. The sheer size of the beast has baffled scientists for years because they seem way too heavy to fly. To give you an example of just how large this flying nightmare was, the bald eagle only reaches a maximum of 14 pounds. That's 14 pounds, or 6.3 kilos, versus 650. The Hatzegopteryx was so big that researchers had to use computerized models to figure out how it managed to even stay airborne. They deduced that the monster used its huge and very powerful legs, along with its wing muscles, to literally catapult itself into the air, at which point it flew like an aeroplane through the skies and snatched up anything it wanted to eat. And in case you're wondering, this animal was indeed a type of pterosaur. Scientists believe it may have been one of the earliest of its kind to reach such gigantic proportions. And unlike birds that waddle around on 2 legs, pterosaurs like this would have 4 legs that they could scuttle around on the ground with, just being generally terrifying. 3. Mosasaurus, rulers of the sea. The Mosasaurus was arguably the most ferocious predator that lived in the oceans during the Cretaceous. Between 145 and 65.5 million years ago, dinosaurs dominated the land, and the Mosasaurus dominated the seas. It had a long tail and limbs like paddles that it used to cruise easily through the water, devouring all in its path with sharp teeth and massive jaws. You would not want to get in the way of a Mosasaurus. There were actually a lot of different types of mosasaurs, with the Mosasaurus being just one genus. There were several different kinds, all of them savage monsters that ruled the oceans. And no, they weren't marine dinosaurs. Instead, they were dangerous reptiles closely related to the snakes and lizards of today. According to the Philip J. Curry Dinosaur Museum, the Jurassic Park movie showed a Tylosaurus mosasaur, which was the largest mosasaur to exist. In real life, it probably only grew up to 50 feet or 15 meters in length. And while it's hard to figure out the exact size of a mosasaur in the Hollywood blockbuster movie, it's conservatively somewhere around 100 feet or 30 meters in length, which is at least twice its real-life size. But just like the dinosaurs, mosasaurs went extinct 65.5 million years ago thanks to the asteroid that wiped everyone out. 2. Godzilla shark, prehistoric reptilian. Paleontologists working with the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science found the fossil of a beast in 2013 that they called Godzilla. This monster was some kind of prehistoric shark that grew to be over 7 feet or 2.1 meters long, which made the name Godzilla quite fitting. The beast also had some very unusual features, such as 12 rows of sharp teeth in its mouth and 2 rows of spines on its back. It took 7 years for researchers to catalogue the different characteristics of the Godzilla shark. What they found is it's the biggest shark ever discovered in New Mexico from around 390 million years ago, at the time when a family of sharks known as Stethacanthus, which Godzilla belonged to, broke off from modern sharks. The biggest difference between these 2 families of sharks is the size of their jaws. Stethacanthus had huge and more rigid jaws that they used to crush prey into mush. It's pretty rare to find actual skeletal material of ancient sharks, let alone a complete skeleton that also preserved the body outline and other soft tissue impressions. So yeah, Godzilla is pretty cool. 1. Deinotherium. Terrible beast. The Deinotherium was a massive animal that looked a lot like an elephant and lived throughout Africa, Europe, and Central Asia. They are believed to be the largest elephants that ever walked the earth, even bigger than the African elephants of today. Unlike modern elephants, these creatures had very long legs, flat foreheads, and shorter trunks. They also had tusks that curved inwards from the bottom of their jaws. This is basically the opposite of modern elephants, and they probably used these backward tusks for stripping tree branches of their vegetation. The first Deinotherium diverged off the evolutionary tree from normal elephants about 28 million years ago. This probably happened in Ethiopia. At the time, the animals were pretty small, only around 6.6 feet or 2 meters tall, but eventually they would grow to be over 13 feet or nearly 4 meters tall and weighing over 29,000 pounds. That's 13,000 kilos. The last of these enormous beasts died out about 1 million years ago in Kenya, suggesting that some of the earliest hominids may have even interacted with this prehistoric animal.
Number 10. Harpswell shark attack. While swimming with a daughter in mid-2020 off Maine's Bailey Island, New York resident Julie D'Imperio Hollowash died in a vicious shark attack. Good Samaritans and emergency personnel alike worked to get the 63-year-old woman to shore and fought to save her life, but she tragically succumbed to her injuries. Witnesses reported that Hollowash and her daughter were laughing and playing in the water in the moments leading up to the fateful encounter. Suddenly, they saw something breach out of the water, and then they heard the screaming. During the attack, which happened just 60 feet or 18 metres from shore, Hollowash was abruptly pulled underwater. According to NBC 10 Boston, she screamed and thrashed for mere seconds before her body went limp. Scientists identified the attacker as a great white based on a tooth fragment recovered in the ordeal's aftermath. The deadly incident was a highly unusual event, in the words of Patrick Kelleher, the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Resources. It's true that great whites are rarely spotted in Maine, which is at the northern end of their range, but it's also not unheard of for one to be seen in the area, with recorded sightings dating back to the 1800s. Researchers believe that the customary 2 or 3 great white sightings off Maine each year could turn into more in the future due to the warming of the region's waters. Number 9. Tossed like a rag doll. A 64-year-old Florida woman named Adrienne Wixo was attacked by a bull shark in early May while out on her longboard near New Smyrna Beach. Bull sharks are one of the most aggressive sharks in the entire ocean. The shark reportedly grabbed her by the foot and, in her words, wouldn't let go as he emerged above the water and thrashed violently, tossing Wixo like a fish in the process. He refused to let go until she kicked him with her free foot, at which point a friend guided her to shore, leaving a bloody trail in the water behind them. Wixo was rushed to the hospital, where she underwent 4-hour surgery to repair her shredded foot. She's expected to recover, at least physically, but disentangling from the psychological damage may prove more complicated. Wixo, who is a lifelong surfer, is unsure whether she'll ever swim in the ocean again. New Smyrna Beach is a world leader when it comes to the number of shark bites known to occur there. And while most injuries are minor, nobody is immune to the possibility of falling victim to a life-threatening or fatal attack. Bite numbers were uncharacteristically low last year, which experts don't see as a sign that things are improving. Instead, they attribute the lower than usual bite rate to last year's coronavirus pandemic restrictions and life in lockdown. Number 8. A deadly bite. In recent weeks, a surfer died in a suspected shark attack at Tuncurry Beach in New South Wales, Australia, located roughly 186 miles or 300 kilometres north of Sydney. The man, who was in his 50s, had noticed the shark just moments earlier and warned his friends of its presence. In a heartbreaking plot twist, it was he who would perish. His friends rushed over when they saw the attack happening, but their efforts to save the man, along with the help of EMTs, were in vain. After losing massive amounts of blood, he went into cardiac arrest and passed away. The shark had inflicted critical injuries on the victim's upper thigh. Witness Michael Guest told 9 News that emergency personnel did everything they possibly could to revive the man, but to no avail. People reported numerous shark sightings in the days leading up to the horrifying incident. The specimen responsible for killing the surfer is believed to be one of two that was seen the day before, one of which measured nearly 15 feet or 4.5 meters long. Civilians and professionals alike responded diligently to the attack, but at the end of the day, nothing could have spared the victim's life, reminding us just how unpredictable and wild these apex predators are. Have you ever seen a shark while swimming in the ocean? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Taking it in their stride. Shark attacks are undoubtedly traumatic encounters. Those that are attacked are often left fearful of ever stepping foot into the ocean again. But a 14-year-old named Parker Blanchett recently offered a different perspective after receiving 100 stitches in the aftermath of a shark attack at North Beach on Kaneohe Marine Corps Base near Honolulu. The 8th grader, who surfed 6 times a week, was riding a wave when a shark bit him in the foot. He felt what he described as a little punch to his leg, and at the first sight of blood, Blanchett immediately paddled ashore. The bite did not last long, about a half a second according to the team's estimate, and he surmised that the shark was roughly 5.5 feet or 1.7 metres long. Once safely on dry land, Blanchett called his mum, Amanda, and calmly informed her of the incident. His laid-back demeanour helped to keep her calm as emergency personnel treated the wound and transported him to the hospital. Blanchett stayed at the hospital for 2 days and received over 100 stitches. Amanda, originally from Illinois, was inspired by her young son's ability to keep cool in a situation that most people would find utterly terrifying. In reality, the shark bit very close to an artery, and Blanchett was extremely lucky it missed the mark because otherwise the bite may easily have proven fatal. Wise beyond his years, the adolescent acknowledged his awareness that when he goes surfing, he is in the shark's territory. He also said he was eager to heal and get back in the water. This was the first recorded shark attack at North Beach, but staff members weren't surprised by it. Speaking with Fox 59, beach lifeguard supervisor Clark Abbey said given the high volume of sharks that passed through the area and travelled there to give birth, that it wasn't a question of if, but when an attack would happen again. Abbey explained that the attack on Blanchett was likely a case of a mistaken identity, that the shark took a bite, realised he wasn't a fish, and continued on with its day. Number 6. Vanished into thin air. Recently, some fishermen saw a shark attack another angler off the Neuville Peninsula, northwest of the capital city of Noumea. Shark attacks off the French territory of New Caledonia in the South Pacific have occurred with alarming regularity so far this year. Emergency and rescue workers searched for the victims but had no luck. Not only did they fail to recover any bodies through an extensive sea and air search, no one was reported missing to police. Witnesses told local newspaper Les Nouvelles Calédoniennes that the attack happened quickly. All they saw, in the words of one observer, was the fins flapping above the water and then nothing more. The local government responded by banning swimming and other water activities in the immediate area for several days while they worked to identify the shark responsible for the attack. Several specimens were captured for autopsy, including a 14-foot or 4.3 metre long tiger shark. At least 2 other people have died in shark attacks off New Caledonia so far this year, and at least 1 person's disappearance remains unexplained, pointing towards an ongoing problem in the region between man and beast. In fact, these numbers are rising globally. Last year, there were 13 recorded fatal shark attacks, spiking from the worldwide annual average of 4. And the speed and swiftness with which the victim in this most recent attack disappeared speaks to how quickly one of these marine predators can end a human life. Makes you think twice about swimming in the ocean. Number 5. Double trouble. A Decatur, Illinois man is grateful for his life after recently being attacked by 2 sharks while on vacation in Belize. Chad Barker and his wife decided to indulge in some thrill-seeking by snorkeling with some nurse sharks, but things didn't go exactly as planned. Less than 30 seconds after entering the water, the current swept Chad into the middle of a shark feeding frenzy, and 2 8-foot or 2.4 metre long specimens sank their teeth into his hand. From the time he entered the water to the time he emerged with deep wounds, less than a minute passed. It happened so fast, Barker told news station WAND 17. With no emergency room nearby, he was taken to a local OB/GYN for stitches, where he paid $200 for a reportedly less than good job. Barker decided to finish out the trip despite his injuries. He and his wife actually planned to retire in Belize, suggesting that while the ordeal may have been startling, it fell short of actually traumatising the pair, although Barker admittedly believes that his luck is inherently bad and that a black cloud follows him around. Only 6% of shark attacks worldwide involve snorkelers, making what happened to Barker a rare occurrence. There are even websites and blogs dedicated to telling people that they shouldn't worry about being bitten while vacationing in Belize. But as this shocking encounter proves, one can never be too careful. Number 4. New Zealand's first deadly shark attack in 8 years. In January of this year, a 19-year-old woman was the first person to die in a fatal shark attack in New Zealand in 8 years. Kayla Marlowe was in the water at Waihi Beach when people suddenly heard screaming. A great white shark dragged her into deeper waters. Lifeguards rushed to get Marlowe out of the water, and emergency workers attempted to perform CPR on her for 20 minutes, but their attempts failed. Marlowe suffered fatal injuries to her leg and was pronounced dead at the scene. Meanwhile, swimmers were ordered to get out of the water. At a vigil memorialising Marlowe, local resident Mark Wilson told the press that it was common to see sharks in the area and that he believes it was only a matter of time before a tragedy like this would happen. Other locals agreed that sharks are often seen in the region, but said the creatures are usually harmless. And the statistics show that they are right. The attack on Marlowe was the first deadly shark encounter in New Zealand in 8 years. Number 3. A close encounter. While spending time on Hawaii's Kalama Beach with her mum in early May, a 6-year-old girl named Anila Resentes had a close encounter with a black-tipped shark that could have easily proven fatal. Anila's mother, Shari Guvia, was filming the little girl frolicking in the shallow water when someone yelled, "Shark!" In the video, Anila turns around and sees what appears to be the end of the shark's tail thrashing around before turning and running towards shore. The quick-thinking child likely did herself a favour in doing so and thankfully suffered no injuries. But she only narrowly avoided the shark, and things very easily could have gone wrong. Shark experts told KHON-TV that the specimen that bit Anila was likely in the process of chasing a fish and that the little girl probably wasn't the animal's target. Unprovoked shark attacks are rare, but they do happen. Stories like this remind us that you don't have to be a shark's target to risk being hurt or killed by one. Number 2. Tourist terror. Late last year, a woman on vacation in the French Caribbean territory of St. Martin was attacked by a shark 500 feet or 150 metres from shore. The woman was swimming in Orient Bay on the northeastern part of the island when the shark swam up and tore her leg off. Unfortunately, she bled out and died on the spot. Shark attacks don't happen very often in St. Martin, according to Florida Program for Shark Research Manager Tyler Bowling, who told CBS News that the only other known unprovoked bite, which was non-fatal, happened in 2005. He also said that out of 34 unprovoked shark bites in the Caribbean since 2000, only 4 were fatal. It's highly unlikely that the woman was killed by a nurse shark, which is the most commonly seen species in the area and considered a non-threat. She was probably attacked by a bull shark or a tiger shark, which occasionally pass through these waters, although they are usually not a threat to humans either, according to shark researcher Mike Heithaus. Gavin Naylor, Program Director of the International Shark Attack File, told Associated Press that most shark attacks in the Caribbean occur around the Bahamas due to its high levels of tourism, pointing out the correlation between the number of people in the water and the number of attacks that tend to happen. But deadly encounters are still, in Naylor's words, pretty unusual in that part of the world. Number 1. A rerouted encounter. A little over a year ago, in May 2020, 26-year-old California native Ben Kelly was fatally attacked by a shark while surfing at Manresa State Beach in Santa Cruz County, roughly 300 feet or 91 metres from shore. The shark bit the man's knee, puncturing an artery and a vein. Emergency personnel rushed to the scene where Kelly was pronounced dead. While the species that killed Kelly remains undetermined, researchers noticed that the number of great whites in the area was increasing, leading them to believe that a great white migration was underway when the tragedy occurred. Their unexpected presence falls in line with sightings of sharks in unusual areas in recent years. Patch reported that in the summer of 2015, scientists noticed that great whites who normally migrate to Mexico were hanging around in SoCal, suggesting that warming waters are affecting where they choose to go. These new seasonal destinations, particularly those that are northerly, are concerning to researchers who wrote that they are primarily worried about the potential conflict with commercial fisheries, conservation of protected species, and public safety.
10. Anomalocaris. How would you like to be swimming in the ocean, minding your own business, just trying to have fun with a couple of friends, when a shrimp so big it could eat you came out of nowhere and started gnawing on your leg? If that sounds absolutely terrifying, you'll be happy that the Anomalocaris is long since extinct. This terrible beast lived in the oceans 530 million years ago during what scientists call the Cambrian explosion. The Anomalocaris gets its name from the Greek, meaning unusual shrimp. It was a master predator and lived in the oceans all over the world. Fossils from the Anomalocaris have been found in Canada, Greenland, China, and even Australia. That's basically every corner of the globe. So, just how big was this monster shrimp? It could grow to be over 6 feet or 1.8 meters long. It had specialized eyes with thousands of lenses to give it obscenely perfect vision. Not only that, it was a fast swimmer and had front limbs with sharp and spiky segments. Combining all of these attributes, the unusual shrimp was a seriously formidable predator. It was essentially the size of a modern shark and even deadlier. Rather than having rows of sharp teeth, the Anomalocaris had 32 overlapping plates, and these plates may have been used to efficiently crush prey. The Anomalocaris is most closely related to crabs and lobsters. At the end of the Cambrian era, when 90% of life on Earth was eradicated during the Great Permian extinction, these large and terrifying shrimp thankfully went extinct. 9. Stethacanthus. The Stethacanthus was very similar to modern sharks. It was a kind of cartilaginous fish that lived 370 to 345 million years ago during the late Devonian period, and then into the Carboniferous era. It actually looked quite similar to the great white shark. The biggest difference is that it had an outrageously large dorsal fin that looked like an ironing board sprouting out from the top of its head. The part of the horse saddle that you hold onto while riding to keep your balance, the horn, well, that's exactly what the dorsal fin on the shark looked like. It's totally bizarre, and apparently it was used as part of a courtship ritual. Scientists know this because they've only ever found the top dorsal fin on male sharks. Even stranger is that the fin was covered in scales that were kind of like teeth. Scientists believe this was to make the creature look more frightening, since other animals would think it had 2 mouths. Yep, I think that would do the trick for me. Other than having a weird dorsal fin, the Stethacanthus was pretty normal for a shark. As you can clearly see, sharks have not changed that much since they first appeared on Earth. They have changed in size and shape, but they've remained pretty much the same. The Stethacanthus actually wasn't as voracious of a predator as some sharks. It spent most of its time in shallow coastal waters, hunting for fish, small cephalopods and crustaceans. And it was also migratory and would usually return to the same places when it was time to mate and have babies. 8. Haast's eagle. The Haast's eagle was a nightmare predator that used to live in New Zealand. According to New Zealand Birds Online, it was the biggest eagle ever described, with a wingspan of up to 9 feet, or 2.7 meters, and a total weight of almost 40 pounds, or 18 kilos. That is significantly larger than any eagle alive today. Its body and wings were that of a giant eagle, and scientists say that it had legs and a bill that was stronger than any vulture species alive today. This means it had the ability to snap through bones with a click of its beak. They also had claws and feet roughly as large as that of a modern tiger. This thing was so big and so strong it could have picked a person up and flown away with them. You wouldn't just have to keep the cat inside when the Haast's eagle was around. You'd have to keep the whole family inside, and even then you might not be safe. From what scientists have been able to put together, the Haast's eagle specialized in hunting the ancient moa on New Zealand's South Island. Moas could grow up to almost 12 feet or 3.6 meters tall, but that didn't stop the Haast's eagle. It would grab the moa with its talons and literally crush its skull. That's all it took to kill the giant beast, at which point the Haast's eagle could do whatever it felt like with the moa's remains. Thankfully, it usually just ate them. If you're wondering just how long ago this terrifying beast vanished off the face of the Earth, it was actually pretty recently. It was only between 500 and 600 years ago. The Maori of New Zealand lived alongside the Haast's eagle, and they even hunted it. There have been anecdotal stories of the Haast's eagle even preying on Maori children. 7. Xenacanthus. The Xenacanthus was a strange mixture between an eel, a shark, and a stingray. Technically, it was a type of shark that lived in the Devonian period and survived all the way until about 202 million years ago. That was when the Triassic ended. Fossils of this animal have been found all over the globe, meaning it was pretty widespread. But even though the Xenacanthus was technically a shark, it looked a lot more like a modern conger eel. It even swam like an eel and had a serpent-like body. It was really just one of the weirder sharks that came and went. But it had one very special thing that would have made it terrifying to swimmers and surfers across the globe. As you may already know, stingrays are close relatives of sharks. In the case of the Xenacanthus, it actually had a spine jutting out from the back of its head that has been connected to the spines on stingrays. Scientists speculate it was probably venomous. The shark was too small to do any real damage with its teeth, only growing to a maximum of just under 7 feet, or 2.1 meters. But if it managed to stab you with a backwards unicorn horn on its head, there's a good chance you would have been poisoned. Did you know that stingrays were close relatives of sharks? Or did that fact just shock you? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Diprotodon. This one's a personal favorite. The Diprotodon was a giant wombat. It was actually the biggest marsupial that ever walked the earth. The adult male could grow up to 10 feet or 3 meters from its head to its tail, with a maximum weight of about 3 tons or 6,000 pounds. That is a big wombat. It lived during the Pleistocene epoch, a time when lots of animals grew to preposterous sizes. The Diprotodon had a pouch. It was about the size of a rhinoceros, and it only ever ate plants. It was also contained to Australia. The remains of this ancient beast have been found all over the country, suggesting continental distribution. They would have lived everywhere that kangaroos live today, but they were significantly bigger. Even the biggest kangaroo only grows to be around 200 pounds or 90 kilos, meaning the Diprotodon could have stepped on it like a bug. The Diprotodon lived as recently as 2 million years ago. It was so big that it had basically no predators other than humans, meaning it was free to do whatever it wanted. However, the babies and juveniles would sometimes become the prey of the even more terrifying Thylacoleo, also known as the marsupial lion. The babies may also have been eaten by giant lizards known as Megalania, and even the quincana, an even more giant Australian crocodile. In other words, Australia was and always will be a terrifying place filled with terrifying monsters. 5. Megapiranha. The megapiranha was exactly what the name suggests. It was a giant piranha. If you think swarms of ordinary piranha are terrifying, imagine being caught in a lake or river with piranha that were about 3 feet or 1 meter long each. These prehistoric monsters were about 3 times the size of modern piranhas. They also had the strongest bites out of any fish relative to their size. This doesn't mean they could bite harder than other fish. What it means is that pound for pound, the megapiranha could bite with more force than even the legendary megalodon. They had teeth shaped like triangular blades serrated like steak knives, which they probably used for slicing apart soft flesh and meat. However, there haven't been many specimens found for scientists to paint a clear picture. According to National Geographic, only 1 fossil has been found, and it was only part of the megapiranha's upper jaw. Still, scientists were able to do their scientist magic and put together a lifelike model of the beast and how hard it could bite. Considering a normal piranha can bite with 30 times its weight, the megapiranha could probably do the same. Luckily for everyone alive today, the megapiranha went extinct somewhere around 5 million years ago. They lived in Argentina, most likely in lakes and rivers. And if you were wondering why they can bite so hard, it's because they had muscles taking up the entire space behind their eyes and mouth, with all those muscles working together to snap the teeth with incredible force. Number 4. Machimosaurus Rex. Speaking of terrifying marine monsters, a skull was found in Tunisia that led scientists to a new species of crocodile. And yes, it is the biggest ever identified. It's called the Machimosaurus Rex, and it had teeth shaped like bullets that it used to crush its prey and rip unsuspecting animals to shreds. The study of the animal was done by the University of Alberta. They discovered that the Machimosaurus Rex was the largest of the crocodiles that lived alongside the dinosaurs, and it was also the last surviving species of crocodile from the age of the dinosaurs. To put the size into perspective, it had a skull that measured 5 feet or 1.5 meters long on its own, with its full body measuring over 35 feet. That's one big crocodile. The crocodile lived 130 million years ago throughout much of northern Africa and what is today England. Back then, Europe was literally swarmed with crocodiles. However, they began to slowly go extinct as the geography changed and their habitats across Europe were lost. It was the Machimosaurus Rex that made its last stand in the little remaining sea of North America before it too went extinct. And to give you one last idea of just how truly big this crocodile was, the skull found by Italian researchers at a dig near Tunis in 2014 was 5.5 feet or 1.6 meters long, bigger than that of a T-Rex. 3. Jaegerlopterus. At the beginning of this video, we met a giant shrimp that was 6 feet or 1.8 meters long and could have easily eaten anybody who got in its way. Now it's time to look at a giant sea scorpion that measured nearly 8 feet or 2.4 meters long. This huge monster had a claw that could easily decapitate a human head. It was the largest arthropod in the world, living 400 million years ago through the lakes and rivers of the earth, but likely never ventured into the oceans. It would have lived with other sea scorpions and prehistoric fish. It also hunted using ambush techniques. It would wait for an animal to get near enough that it could reach out one of its claws and boom, shred it to pieces. The claw of the giant sea scorpion was recently found in Germany. Unlike crabs and lobsters that only have a single pinching claw, the sea scorpion had two. It was basically the Edward Scissorhands of the water. Nobody is sure why these terrible monsters grew to be so big, but one theory is that they had to get bigger and bigger as the fish around them got bigger and bigger too. And then they had to get meaner and deadlier as the ancient fish also began growing armor. These giant scorpions were top predators until vertebrates arrived, at which point the scorpions lost their dominance and would eventually go extinct. Number 2. Direwolves. As cool as it may sound to have a bunch of direwolves running around like some kind of Game of Thrones realm, the truth is that it probably wouldn't be that great. Direwolves were massive predators that hunted in packs and were significantly more dangerous than the wolves of today. They were bigger, more muscled, and maybe even more aggressive. The last direwolf went extinct around 13,000 years ago, along with the saber-toothed tiger and the cave bear, and to be honest, we may be better off without them. But here's something interesting. Scientists from Durham University in the UK recently extracted DNA from direwolf fossils dating back around 50,000 years. They wanted to see just how closely related grey wolves are to direwolves. Results showed the two species are not actually as closely related as previously thought. Instead, they diverged genetically 5.7 million years ago from a common ancestor. The research team says both wolf species evolved similarly because of similar lifestyles, with grey wolves developing in Eurasia while direwolves grew big and mean in America. Number 1. Giant penguin. Last but not least, researchers have just discovered something you may have mixed feelings about. As it turns out, there were penguins that once roamed the earth bigger than people. There was a whole race of gigantic penguins the size of an average human being. Fossilized remains of this prehistoric monster penguin were discovered in New Zealand back in 2018 by amateur paleontologist Lee Love. The huge penguins lived between 66 and 56 million years ago and boasted an average height of 5 foot and 3 inches, or 1.6 meters. In comparison, the great big emperor penguin of today is only a maximum of 3 feet and 11 inches. The Titanic penguin also weighed around 176 pounds, or 80 kilos. While this might not seem immediately horrifying, it would be for people living in New Zealand where these monster penguins once called home. Imagine if your neighbor was a penguin that could eat your kids. Not that it would, but still, it's not something you want to risk. These penguins were actually quite a bit different from those that are still around today. First of all, the makeup of their leg bones suggests that they couldn't stand yet. They were more likely to be powerful swimmers, not the adorable waddlers we recognize today. But this has caused quite a bit of an issue for paleontologists who can't quite figure out if the penguin evolved to swim or evolved to stand. They still don't know which one came first. 10. The giant salamander. The giant salamander is one of the biggest and weirdest reptiles in the world. This beast occupies the rivers of China and Japan. It's so huge that the biggest ones can clock in at around 6 feet. It goes without saying, this is not your garden variety salamander. It's bigger than most people. Even more remarkable is that it has gone unchanged for millions of years. It has reached its peak in evolution, though its numbers have significantly dwindled recently, and it now stands on the brink of extinction. What does the giant salamander do? It mostly hides out at the bottom of rivers, vacuuming fish into his giant mouth whenever one swims a little too close. But what's really strange is that the giant salamander stinks like pepper. Those who have encountered one describe it as having an overwhelmingly pepper-like scent. And even though it's so big, it's actually pretty quick and can scurry off in a hurry when it needs to. It even makes weird noises, and it keeps growing bigger and bigger until it reaches the perfect adult stage, which can take years. The giant salamander can't see very well, but it's still a top predator in its ecosystem thanks to its keen sense of smell and the unique receptors it has on its skin to detect vibrations in the water, allowing it to easily hunt even while blind. Just be careful if you get in the water where this creature lives. It's probably not very keen on human invaders. 9. Megalania. The biggest lizard ever seen by human eyes is the Megalania prisca, a huge terrestrial lizard. It was a type of monitor lizard described first in Australia in 1859. At the time, the lizard was living sparsely in Australia, though it had once occupied open forests, woodlands, and even grasslands. Many people have compared the Megalania to the Komodo dragon since they are pretty similar in size and had pretty similar diets, like large mammals, other reptiles, and even giant birds. However, the Megalania was nothing like the modern Komodo dragon. It was significantly larger. The biggest of these monitor lizards could grow to be over 15 feet or 4.5 meters long. That is rivaled today only by the saltwater crocodile. It has sharp teeth that could rip apart meat very easily. This would have been handy when it was hunting ancient kangaroos, wild deer and pigs, and even goats. The lizard also had toxic saliva and was just as much of a scavenger as it was an ambush predator. Its toxic saliva could infect a victim and cause them to slowly die, at which point the lizard could feast on their corpse. According to the Australian Museum, this huge lizard may have even feasted on pygmy elephants before humans ever arrived in Australia. But today, the pygmy elephant and the Megalania are both extinct. Oddly enough, there are no complete skeletons of the Megalania, and all paleontologists have ever found are fragments of skull material along with random teeth and fossils of limbs and jaws. I'm just glad these terrifying creatures are gone. Imagine getting into a fight with this real-life dragon. 8. Malayan gharial. The Malayan gharial is a very special type of reptile that only lives in Indonesia and Malaysia and is considered endangered. It's a little smaller than other gharials found in the world, but it's by far the most unique. Just like other crocodilians, these creatures spend most of their time lounging in the water. If you are in their territory, watch out. They have specialized bodies that allow them to swim quickly, while their muscular tails propel them through the water at blistering speeds. They have eyes situated at the top of their heads, allowing them to see and hear everything going on around them, even when mostly submerged. Oh, and they can also breathe with their mouth closed, thanks to special structures in their throat that let them breathe while preventing water from getting into their mouth. But just how big can the Malayan gharial get? They're actually pretty large for a crocodilian and can grow to be just over 13 feet or 4 meters in length. They have scaly armor protecting their body and are a dark brown color rather than the traditional alligator green. If you've ever wondered what the slender snout of the gharial is for, it's used to catch fish. The slenderer the snout is, the more efficient the animal is at snapping little fish out of the water. These are apex fishermen, though they sometimes also snack on crabs, poking their snouts into their underground burrows and stealing them right out of their own homes. Not only that, but Malayan gharials have also been caught eating monkeys that wander too close to the water's edge. They'd probably eat you, if they got the chance. 7. Leatherback sea turtle. Most of us are pretty familiar with sea turtles, but are you familiar with the different types of sea turtles? The most widely distributed turtle species of all is the leatherback, which also happens to be the biggest turtle in the world, with weights of up to 2,200 pounds. Rather than having a hard, bony shell like a tortoise, the leatherback has a leathery shell made of cartilage-like tissue. It's almost as if the turtle is covered in leather armor instead of bone armor. Leatherback sea turtles can be found basically everywhere throughout the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and even the Indian Ocean. They roam from Alaska to New Zealand and don't really care how hot or cold it is, because they can maintain a consistent body temperature regardless of the water around them. Leatherback sea turtles are also great travelers. Some individuals will travel across an entire ocean, maybe even several times. Females specifically will travel to and from their favorite nesting sites, almost always returning to the exact same beach where they first hatched to build their own special nest. Even more amazing is that leatherback sea turtles don't seem to care about ocean pressure. They can dive down to 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters and stay there for over an hour. They can dive deeper than any other turtle and deeper than most marine mammals. 6. Ancient dragons. Before dinosaurs, there were reptiles that looked an awful lot like dragons and had huge heads with teeth like steak knives. They lived 250 million years ago and were called erythrosuchords, or more simply, red crocodiles. They were huge and vicious and perhaps the most effective land predators on Earth at that time. These reptiles could grow to be around 9 to 10 feet long, or 3 meters. While that doesn't sound huge by the standards of today, it was pretty large for the pre-dinosaur world. They would have walked on 4 legs and looked similar to mythical dragons, only smaller. Sadly, there isn't a whole lot we know about them. Professor Richard Butler says there are lots of animals from this time on Earth, all of them weird and interesting, but we just don't know as much as we'd like about them all. These lizards had very big heads when compared to their bodies, and experts believe it's because they were hypercarnivores, meaning they had diets composed of nothing except meat. In other words, they were super predators and hardcore meat eaters. 5. Olive sea snake. The olive sea snake is one of the biggest and scariest reptiles that you might encounter on your next snorkeling trip in Australia. These horrifying monsters live throughout the tropical Pacific Ocean between Australia and New Guinea. They also live all throughout the surrounding island groups, hiding inside the coral reefs where they find their prey. The olive sea snake is not that hard to come across, though most humans would like to avoid them. They also grow to be over 6.5 feet or 2 meters in length. Imagine a giant python, only swimming. If you're wondering if the olive sea snake is dangerous for scuba divers, the answer is, it depends. Apparently, the olive sea snake is naturally curious and has been known to approach divers. While they aren't that aggressive, they can bite when threatened, and their bite is known to be fatal. But when the olive sea snake isn't busy hunting and killing innocent divers, they're hunting other creatures in the ocean. And unlike other reptiles, the olive sea snake lives its entire life in the ocean without ever nesting on the shore, making it quite unique in the world of marine reptiles. Have you ever gone deep sea diving? What animals did you see in your expedition? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife for more exciting videos just like this one. 4. The nano chameleon. Take a look, not at the biggest reptile on Earth, but at the smallest. Scientists have just discovered the absolute smallest reptile ever seen by human eyes, a creature so tiny that it can fit on the head of a match. It's called a nano chameleon, and it's the smallest out of any other chameleon and out of any other of the 11,500 species of reptile. The body of the male chameleon is only 0.53 inches or 1.2 centimeters long. That is as tiny as it gets for a terrestrial animal, about the size of a sunflower seed. It was discovered on an expedition to Madagascar. And while the nano chameleon has been threatened recently by deforestation, it now has a protected habitat to thrive in. You can rest easy knowing this ridiculously adorable reptile will continue living for the foreseeable future. As of right now, only 2 specimens have been discovered, a male and a female, and even though the researchers tried desperately to find more, they simply couldn't. They figured the habitat the lizard lives in is quite small, which makes sense considering how tiny the chameleon is. And at the end of the day, it's lucky the scientists found 2 specimens at all. We're literally talking about chameleons that can change their color to blend in with the environment, about a ½ inch long. 3. Sea lizard egg. A couple of years ago, Chilean scientists found a strange fossil in Antarctica that they thought looked kind of like a deflated football. For 10 years, the specimen sat in a dirty old collection of unknown objects at the National Museum of Natural History in Chile. Nobody knew what it was. Finally, researchers from the University of Texas arrived to study the fossil and realized they were dealing with a giant egg from about 66 million years ago that probably belonged to some kind of ancient sea lizard reptile monster. The egg itself is almost a foot or 30 centimeters long, making it the second largest egg of any animal known to science. It's also the first fossilized egg to ever be found in Antarctica. What's really horrifying is that scientists don't actually know what animal laid the egg. It could have been a large marine reptile like a mosasaur, but scientists don't know for sure. So far as we know, mosasaurs didn't lay eggs. Nobody can even conceive of just how big and horrifying the reptilian that laid this egg would have been millions of years ago. And since there were no other fossils found nearby the egg and no other eggs have been discovered, right now we'll just have to deal with the mystery of it. Imagine if the scientists figured out how to resurrect the species from the egg though. Jurassic Park could become real. 2. Mugger crocodile. The mugger crocodile is not the biggest crocodile in the world, but it is one that you've probably never heard of. It's also known as the marsh crocodile and has the broadest snout of any living croc to date. It lives only in southern Asia and on the Indian subcontinent and is more alligator than crocodile in appearance, though it is still a crocodile. The marsh crocodile has a flat head, a rounded snout, and webbed feet, although it hardly uses its feet for much. It can be found mostly in irrigation canals, saltwater lagoons, and any accompanying marsh. What's quite unique about the mugger crocodile is that it has very social behavior. They communicate and interact with one another and practice significant vocalization. When not busy snapping at each other, they build tunnels in the dirt and then hide in them during the day to beat the heat, swimming out at night to search for food. When food is scarce, mugger crocodiles will migrate across great distances to find better feeding grounds. As for just how huge these crocs get, they can grow to be a maximum of around 15 feet or 4.5 meters in length. It's not that large, but you still wouldn't want one of them to bite you. A mugger crocodile could still easily rip your leg off. Number 1. Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon is the biggest living species of lizard, but we've all heard of them before. But what we didn't know is where it came from. Until just recently, researchers actually believe the Komodo dragon originated from a smaller lizard in Indonesia. They thought it evolved to such a large size because there wasn't enough competition from predators nearby. However, an international team of scientists may have disproved the standing theory of the origins of the Komodo dragon. Looking at fossils from eastern Australia 300,000 years to 4 million years before today, scientists have confirmed Australia as the birthplace of the legendary dragon, and quite a long time ago. Scientists are now saying the ancestor of the Komodo dragon evolved in Australia and then migrated west around 900,000 years ago, eventually landing in Indonesia. The theory is supported by fossil specimens found on the island of Timor, between Australia and Indonesia. Fossils here have revealed a new type of giant lizard larger than the Komodo dragon that has not yet been named. It now seems that all the largest lizards originated in Australia, with the Komodo dragon being the last in the line of the great lizards. But what really confuses scientists is how the Komodo dragon survived on the small islands throughout Indonesia while going extinct in Australia, which is larger, more spacious, and was filled with more food sources. 10. Eastern brown snake. The brown snake actually refers to two different genera of snakes, and these two snakes are found on two different continents. If you're in North America, the brown snake is a small, shy, non-venomous snake. But if you're in Australia, like me, the brown snake is the bane of every Australian's existence. It's one of 9 species of brown snake in the country and considered to be in the top ranking of the world's deadliest snakes. The venom is powerful enough to kill a full-grown man. The largest brown snake can measure over 8 feet or 2.4 meters in length, and according to Australian Geographic, they boast the second most toxic venom of any land snake known to science. The venom produced by the snake has several different toxins, with some causing paralysis, some preventing blood from clotting, and all of them working together to cause brain hemorrhaging, internal bleeding, and eventual death. Between 2000 and 2016, there were only about 2 deaths attributed to brown snakes each year in Australia. This is actually pretty good, all things considered. They do have quite the reputation for being aggressive, but they typically try to stay away from humans. You'd have to be very unlucky to be bitten by an eastern brown snake. Number 9. Rattlesnake. You definitely don't want to run into a rattlesnake. This is one of the most dangerous and most venomous snakes found anywhere in North America. You can find them all throughout the southwestern United States and northern Mexico. If you happen to live in Arizona, congratulations! There are 13 different species of rattlesnakes in the state, more than anywhere else. But just what makes rattlesnakes so special? It's their rattle. If you live in Arizona, chances are you're pretty familiar with it. These snakes rattle as a warning sign, and it's a really good thing they do that. The rattle has undoubtedly saved thousands of people from accidentally stepping on a coiled rattlesnake in a field and getting bitten. But what are the rattles made out of, and how do they make that noise? According to herpetologist Sarah Vianam, the rattle is built of segments of keratin at the end of the snake's tail. When the snail shakes its tail, the segments hit each other and produce a low buzzing noise. Rattlesnake venom is a nice little mixture of hemotoxins and neurotoxins, but mostly hemotoxins. Hemotoxins target blood and tissues, causing hemorrhaging and necrosis. Their venom is an absolute cocktail of chemical elements. Neurotoxins target the nervous system, which can cause paralysis. What's really cool is that each time a rattlesnake sheds its skin, it grows another segment on its rattle, making its warning even louder. 8. Saw-scaled viper. The saw-scaled viper is a small snake with deadly venom, and it's one of the most dangerous snakes in India. It's also so tiny you could probably fit one in your shoe. Just like the North American rattlesnake, the saw-scaled viper has a unique warning system that keeps people far away from it. It doesn't have a rattle on its tail. Instead, it coils tightly into a knot and rubs its scales together to make a sound like a saw buzzing. This is a life-saving noise, especially since the snake lives primarily in sand dunes where it's basically invisible due to its light brown sandy coloring. The only way to be aware of the danger is the low buzzing noise coming from the sand. They also leave unique tracks in the sand that let people know they've been there. Rather than slithering forward, these snakes move sideways, winding their way across the sand and leaving behind a messy trail of lines. As for just how dangerous the saw-scaled viper is, a single bite can cause you to lose a limb. The tissue damage can be so severe that if you don't make it to the hospital quickly enough, your arm or leg might actually fall off. 7. Mainland tiger snake. The mainland tiger snake can be identified by, well, its tiger stripes. The snake usually has an olive brown body with light bands, making it look kind of like a tiger, though it doesn't actually have any orange on it. These snakes aren't very long, they only grow to a maximum of around 3 feet or 1 meter in length. But don't let the tiger snake's stubby stature fool you. These snakes are wildly dangerous. According to the Australian Reptile Park, the mainland tiger snake is considered the 4th most toxic land snake anywhere on the planet. The species is often associated with watery environments such as creeks, dams, drains, lagoons, wetlands, and swamps. They can also occur in highly degraded areas, for example, grazing lands, but especially where there is water and local cover. Tiger snakes will shelter in or under fallen timber, in deep matted vegetation, and in disused animal burrows. Unlike most other Australian elapids, tiger snakes climb well on both vegetation and human constructions, and have been found as high as 33 feet or 10 meters above the ground. They live primarily in Australia and can be found in places with significant human populations. This means encounters can be quite common. Yikes! Back in the day, tiger snakes were the #1 cause of snakebite fatalities in Australia. They have since been overtaken by the deadlier eastern brown snake. But still, you don't want to mess with the tiger snake. They traditionally live in wet areas that have a lot of frogs and lizards. Places like these are usually teeming with these snakes. If bitten, consider yourself dead if you don't get to the hospital immediately. 6. King cobra. In Malaysia, king cobras are basically everywhere. You can step on them just walking down the street, and they can even bite you while you're just doing your business sitting on the toilet. Well, it's not that dramatic, but they are still around. A very unlucky man recently had a rather grim encounter with one of these snakes. He was only 28 years old, working on the west coast of Borneo. He went to his house, sat down to use his toilet, and was pretty upset to say the least, when a king cobra slithered out of nowhere and bit him on his left arm. The snake must have slithered into the toilet when he wasn't looking. Jeez, at least knock first. Luckily, he got the cobra off his arm, then managed to come back and beat the snake to death. He then took the snake with him to the hospital so that they could identify the deadly serpent and give him the proper antivenom. He lived to tell the tale, though the experience was ridiculously painful. This guy is actually quite lucky to be alive. King cobras can kill a person within just 30 minutes of biting them. Plus, a single bite comes with enough poison to kill 20 grown men. The bite from a king cobra can even kill an elephant. The fact that this young man had enough time to beat the cobra to death and get to the hospital is a miracle. Most people aren't so lucky. 5. Beaked sea snake. Sea snakes are some of the most venomous in the world. As horrifying as it is, there are about 60 species of sea snake slithering through the waterways around our planet. Most are docile, and to be honest, you don't have a very high likelihood of running into a sea snake while at the beach. However, if you happen to be in Southeast Asia, you could find yourself facing off against the beaked sea snake, a horrible creature with some of the most potent venom in the world. It's also known as the common sea snake, hook-nosed sea snake, and the volocadon sea snake. This reptile lives in estuaries and lagoons and often gets tangled in local fishing nets. This is why fishermen are more frequently bitten by this snake than anyone else. And according to Discover magazine, the beaked sea snake has venom more potent than that of the cobra or the rattlesnake. Its fangs are only 4 millimeters long, but its jaws can stretch widely, allowing it to swallow its prey whole. This snake feeds mostly on shrimp and catfish by lurking in the shallow, murky bottoms in mangrove swamps and coastal waters. They locate their prey by touch and smell. Like other snakes, it waits for its victim to stop struggling before consuming it head first. The beaked sea snake is active during the day and at night. They don't need a lot of sleep. They're also able to dive 328 feet or 100 meters and stay underwater for 5 hours before resurfacing. Just 1.5 milligrams of this snake's venom is 4 to 8 times more deadly than cobra venom. That's a whole lot of scary in one small little package. 4. The blue snake. There are not really a lot of blue snakes just slithering and hanging around. It's a very rare color for a snake and one that belongs exclusively to the blue pit viper. Even though the snake looks very beautiful with its electric blue coloring, it's actually extremely deadly and has one of the most dangerous bites of any snake in the entire world. The blue viper has such strong venom that a single bite can cause bleeding, not only externally, but internally too. In the worst cases, this can prove fatal. Oh, and they also happen to be super aggressive. Great! But why is the blue viper so blue? It's actually a subspecies found only in Indonesia, and actually, they aren't usually blue. These snakes are almost always green, with the blue variety being extremely rare. This is because even 2 blue snakes can give birth to green babies. Blue vipers are about as rare as yellow penguins. Though beautiful, it would be in your best interest to stay far away from this Smurfy snake. 3. Blue crate. The blue crate is an exceptional snake whose venom contains neurotoxins that directly attack the human nervous system. After envenomation, a person's nervous system will shut down and death swiftly occurs within just 12 short hours. When left untreated, the mortality rate is upwards of 70%. Even if you manage to get the proper antivenom, you still have a 50% chance of dying. The blue crate is without a doubt the most terrifying snake in Malaysia, purely based on its deadliness. But what's really weird is that the bite doesn't actually hurt very much. There's usually no pain at the location where the fangs pierce the skin. This means a lot of people don't even know they've been bitten. Sometimes a blue crate will sneak into a village, slither into somebody's house where they lay asleep on the floor, and bite them. Because there's no pain, the victim will often wake up already dying, suffering respiratory failure and complete paralysis of muscles and nerves. Suffice to say, this is not a great way to go. Number 2. Snake in the lettuce. A couple of shoppers in Australia got a bit more than they bargained for at their local grocer. They found a baby pale-headed snake inside their bag of fresh produce. It happened to a couple in Sydney. They purchased a bag of supermarket lettuce and found the rare venomous snake staring back at them once they got home. At first, the couple didn't know what to do. The reptile was pretty small and seemed to be sleeping when they opened the bag. Not knowing what kind of snake it was, the couple were wise to stay away and call animal services. Animal services told them on the phone to be careful because it could be a baby eastern brown snake, one of the most venomous and aggressive in the whole country. It was after the couple shared pictures that they were told the snake was medically significant. They found out later that medically significant means if bitten, you must go to the hospital immediately. Nobody is sure how the snake got into the lettuce. These are pretty shy snakes, and luckily they have no recorded fatalities. The animal services finally came and took the snake away from the couple, but if one of them had stuck their hand in the bag by accident, they would have been in some big trouble. 1. Mangrove snake. The mangrove snake is actually one of the least known venomous serpents in the entire world. Have you heard of it? No? Didn't think so. It's a very unique looking animal, slender with narrow yellow bands segmented across its black body. Another name for the mangrove snake is the yellow-ringed cat snake. The eye structure allows it to see a lot better at night when it is most active and on the hunt. This thing just looks venomous. It can normally be found coiled around mangrove branches, hence the name, that hang over coastal waters. In other words, if you're doing some kayaking at night, you'd better be careful of mangrove snakes in the trees above. But where do these venomous snakes live? Primarily in Southeast Asia. They can be found all throughout Indonesia and Malaysia, through Thailand, all the way to Vietnam. And even more horrifying is that according to the Smithsonian National Zoo, a population of mangrove snakes was accidentally introduced to Texas. As for just how venomous the mangrove snake is, most people won't actually die from a single bite. It has rear fangs that inject its victims with mild venom. It uses this venom for hunting its prey, which primarily consists of birds, though the venom has little effect on land animals like mice and other small mammals. In humans, it's not exactly lethal, but it will cause discoloration of the skin and agonizing pain for the unlucky person that was bit. Thanks for watching. Which one of these snakes freaked you out the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button for more awesome content. See you next time. Bye-bye now.